All right. Hello, guys. Welcome.
Good afternoon.
Yep. We're back in the podcast.
It's still January in Oregon.
It's still January in Oregon. We've had an inordinate amount of sunshine. I think everyone's waiting for
People are freaking out.
the other shoe to drop. Is that a saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But boy, Chicago, the high of 6 degrees yesterday, wind chill like 10 below. That's a cold place. I remember those days.
Yeah. I don't know why
It's not
anyone
fit for human
stays
consumption.
there, to be honest.
I don't either. It's a mystery.
Especially like North Dakota.
Yeah.
Like, what is there that you love so much
Yeah.
that isn't also in Arizona?
Yeah. Cold. That's what it's
Yeah.
not in Arizona.
Yeah.
You have to really love the cold. You really do. It's not something that it's just like, oh, I can't wait till it gets cold.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't hate it, but I don't love it that much. I'll say that.
Yeah.
But anyway.
When I was a kid, the wheels would freeze on your car. So when you went to drive it, it felt like your wheels were square because they were flat on one side because they literally would freeze. And you know what I mean? So
they'd have to warm up.
Yeah, they'd have to warm up. It felt like the Flintstones for the first few minutes. I remember thinking, this isn't good.
No.
This isn't good.
No, it's not good. Yeah. Well, that's been your weather report from Church on the Hill.
That's it. We're in Oregon, not in Chicago. Thank God.
Yeah, we're in Oregon, not in Chicago. We've done a couple things this last week. Want to maybe talk about both of them a little bit. And that is we're going through our sermon series in the Gospel of John.
Yeah.
And we hit Lazarus. That's John chapter 11. But also this week we restarted. We're doing a leadership cohort. Is that a fair thing to call it?
Yep.
Its name is the Ministry Apprenticeship Project, MAP, M-A-P. Doing that with a relatively small group of people. I mean, not tiny, but fit in a largish, room. What's the value in leaders? I mean, we could maybe talk about both of these things, but why do we do leadership? I don't know that the word leader is in the Bible so much. But it's all over the Bible too.
Right.
Kind of like missions. The word missions isn't found in the Bible.
Yeah.
But it's all over the Bible.
Yeah. I think leadership or leaders or the development of leaders is probably the most critical piece of work that we have in front of us. You think about it, the structures of our culture, structures of our society. I mean, not even the word culture, but the structures of our society rise and fall on leadership. The health of a family, women and children and men living together. I think it rises and falls on somebody leading that family. The success of a team, whether it's sports team or a business team or a ministry team, rises and falls on leadership. I think we see a crisis of leadership right now in government. I think the effectiveness and the health of a government rises and falls on leadership. You look around at the nations, the wealth, we can look at nations, we can name them right now. Venezuela is a case in point where incredible natural resources, a very wealthy nation, but it's one of the poorest nations in the Western Hemisphere because of bad leadership. So Proverbs says, when the wicked rule, the people mourn. So when the leader or when the rulers are wicked, bad leaders, the people suffer. So it's everywhere. And then the church, of course, I think that's easy to look at as well. When you have healthy leaders, the body of Christ is healthy. And when you have not so healthy leaders, it's a grieving thing to watch.
I was thinking it might be the place where the world and the body of Christ, those that believe, differ the most. And like I was thinking about it, like a Christian architect and a pagan architect. Obviously, there's a big difference in them spiritually, but they might put the same thing to paper. They might do the same thing in how they do their thing, their craft. It come from different hearts, but it could be almost identical, and you wouldn't know the difference. If you just showed me, a building that was designed by a Christian and a building that was designed by a pagan, I might not be able to tell the difference, right? But how a Christian leader leads and how a non-Christian leader leads, I think that could be a huge divide because of the way we see the world and what Jesus taught us and how he came in and led, which was he was just a king like no other.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. When you were talking about the architect piece, the first thing that came to my mind was being in Moscow many years ago during the Cold War, before the whole glasnost and the change. And,
Soviet bloc
and looking at Soviet bloc architecture and seeing how drab and dull and lifeless. No, I get what you're saying, though, that, a drawing is a drawing.
The tools of the trade, a plumber and a plumber.
Yeah.
But how you lead if you're a believer and how you lead if you're a non-believer, you are going to have very different opinions about what to do.
Yeah, especially when none of us we're not, when we talk about leading, we're not talking about leading a pack of dogs. We're talking about leading human beings. And so you think about the complexity of a human being and what you believe about that.
Yeah.
A non-believer may believe a lot of things. That one of the obvious ones is that if I don't believe in God, well, I'm certainly not going to believe you're created in God's image. And so the way I treat you, I think, is going to be different than someone who says, no, every human being has value.
Yeah.
Why? Because of my worldview that says they're created in God's image.
Yeah, I think you would see a huge difference between having being led by a Christian leader of a company and being led by a non-Christian
You'd hope
leader of a
so.
company.
Yeah.
You ought to. If they're applying the principles of Christ, you will see a big difference.
Yeah.
They can choose not to, and their faith only impacts them and not their work, and that's a sad thing.
Yeah.
But if their belief in Jesus and their understanding of the gospel is applied to the way that they lead a company, the way they lead a sports franchise, that's going to be a different thing.
Yeah. And how could you not have a different methodology if you have distinctly different ends? In other words, a business, the end of the business, the reason a business is in business is the bottom line. We want to turn a profit. We want to satisfy shareholders. And I get that, of course. But if I'm a believer leading a business, then obviously I still want to pay attention to the bottom line, but I'm not going to step on people or use people or abuse people to get there. So it's going to show up, right?
The accumulation of wealth will be used for different things.
Yes. Yeah, the end.
Yeah. I mean, you see the difference between someone who's accumulated wealth and just use it for themselves. And it's a strange thing because it's everywhere right now. I mean, if you look at the billionaires of the world, there's so much conversation around billionaires because they've become a class all their own. They're just a completely different thing.
Yeah, that's true.
Like they have the wealth of nations at their fingertips, and can lecture everyone else about right and wrong and what to do and what not to do and how to live their life, while they live in a completely different atmosphere almost because they can surround themselves with. But we've both met believers who have accumulated wealth and what they do with that wealth. Yeah. And what they do with their influence and their power is very different.
Yeah. Or again, it should be. I think we've seen too. Of course, I think there's hypocrisy in every circle. There's hypocrisy in the business world, in Hollywood, and in the Christian church. I think there's people who profess or proclaim that they live for eternity, their kingdom, their worldview is a kingdom worldview, but then they make decisions that obviously are not that way. They're not congruent, right? Yeah. And so I think it's an ongoing challenge. I mean, if you're a believer, you should say so. I was just watching, it was the playoff game last Sunday, and it was the Broncos played the Patriots. And the Patriots won. Tough game. But they grabbed one of the, I think it was a running back. I can't remember. He's got a very, very different name. And he immediately launched into this whole thing about, this is all about God. I give God all the glory. God helped me to be a good athlete.
That's cool.
And it was good. It was good.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, yeah, you had a platform. You had 2 minutes with a microphone, and you pointed out.
Took the opportunity.
You gave thanks to God, and that in a sense is a leadership thing. You took the initiative to proclaim and give thanks.
Yeah, I was just thinking because we just taught this the other night, and I was just thinking about that. Like what as we sat, because we sat around the table, we had some table time, we had some table conversation, and I thought, what's the difference between just the business principles you would bring to bear to teach business people how to do and how to lead?
Yeah.
And how would the kingdom, like what's the difference?
Yeah.
Can you tell the difference if you read a book
and
it doesn't mention the name Jesus or the gospel, can you tell whether it's coming from the perspective of the gospel or if it's coming from the perspective of selfishness?
That's good.
Yeah.
And the answer is yes. I mean, in the sense of there's a lot of crossover.
Sure.
An author that comes to my mind right away is Patrick Lencioni. Patrick Lencioni is a believer in Jesus. He comes from a conservative background, and yet he's written a dozen books on leadership. And if you read his books, you don't see him necessarily mentioning the gospel in the sense.
They're not only sold in a Christian bookstore.
Yeah. And he's sold millions, gazillions of copies. But he's using biblical principles, right? He's using principles of humility and kindness and forgiveness and things like that are found, in all over Scripture. And, but it's pretty cool. And I don't think it has to have a Christian label on it for it to be Christian principles.
But there's going to be a difference if you make The Art of War your playbook, or if you make The Gospel of John your playbook.
Absolutely.
And honestly, The Art of War is one of the most read books in the world by leaders.
Yeah.
Like they think, this is how you do it. And they see it.
Scorched earth.
Yeah. Honestly, it's kind of crazy to me that is, you can succeed that way if succeed is and defeating your enemy.
And doesn't it all goes back to the bottom line. What is success? The definition of success. I think that in a sense is the defining factor, I guess, that you have to, what is your definition of success? And the leaders that I've known in my life, both inside and outside the church, who were believers, I think they really held that carefully in their hand, because that can get skewed pretty easy. But success wasn't the bottom line in the sense of finances. Success was an entirely different measurement.
Yeah, and in the Old Testament and the New Testament, if you think about the people who led God's people to try to follow God and whatever purposes he had for them in that time or generation, it's a funny mixed lot.
Their personalities.
Their personalities are mixed,
quirky.
Yeah, but there's some measure of humility that is worked in them. Sometimes it has to be almost forced on them. Moses might be an example of that.
Yeah.
Moses was a prince of Egypt, and then he was in a desert leading sheep.
Yeah, he was a murderer.
Yeah.
And then he ended up on the backside of the desert. Yeah.
David also. David was the youngest, the smallest of, the shepherd of the sheep, the last one called to battle. And there was a humility in him that seemed to serve him well.
Yeah.
And then when he lost that humility while he was being a king is when he failed deeply.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things we talked about the other night was the combination of we use two words, appointing and anointing. And an appointing is a God-given assignment, and that's what leadership is, right? We said leadership is the definition is leading God's people, a God-given opportunity to lead God's people towards God's purposes.
Sure.
So you see that in David and Joseph and Daniel and all these other guys, a God-given opportunity. They all were on different timelines, but they led God's people towards God's purposes, ultimately for God's glory. But along the way, they were messy.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, they were. Yeah, I think in the New Testament you see as well like a variety. I think a Paul is so much different than a James or a Peter.
Right, yeah.
But all three of them were key leaders in the church and had different strengths.
Yeah.
And were used to accomplish different things.
Yeah.
Each of them.
That's what I love about the gospel, because God works with our personalities and our wiring and our individual kind of giftings. We don't all have to think the same, and I'm glad we don't.
Yeah.
We don't all have to, like Neil Diamond or sushi. And I'm glad. He allows for variety. He allows for even complexity. Yeah. There are some people that they're relatively simple and easy to work with, and there's other people that are complicated. And I don't know what produced the mix, but it's beautiful.
Yeah, you and I have very different personalities, different likes, different everything, but we've worked well together for 15 years.
Yeah, and we're still here.
Yeah, it's funny. I find people often assume like, oh, you guys must be a lot alike. Like, no, we're not actually. I don't think so. Well, what we do have in common is a mission.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the same place. But hopefully you want to come to the same place with different tools and different abilities. Is everyone had the same mission, but they also all had the same tools and abilities, you'd kind of be in trouble. You need some diversity on the team of gifts and talents.
Every time you see that, you get glimpses of that once in a while in people and in teams. When you were talking, the first thing I thought of was, and this is a crazy, maybe a very secular example, but the Chicago Bulls of the 1990s, the three-peat champions. If you looked at, and I followed them just because of the Chicago thing, and they had a crazy mix of personalities, but they had Phil Jackson, and Phil Jackson, they called him the Zen master because he had this magic ability to make all those differences work together to win championships.
Yeah.
That's a good leader. I mean, again, crazy. And you got millions of dollars and egos and all that. And you got Dennis Rodman's and Michael Jordan's on the same team, but yet he was able to manage it.
It's fair to say he wasn't trying to get uniformity out of them.
Absolutely. He made room. He made room for their I mean, and again, some of it was, it wouldn't have worked anywhere else, but he wasn't managing.
You're thinking of Dennis Rodman.
He wasn't. I mean, there was an interview that years later with Steve Kerr, who was the point guard of that team, that championship team, and Dennis Rodman had stopped showing up for all the practices, and they were in the playoffs. And people were like, well, doesn't that bug you? And his response was, well, if you haven't noticed, he said, Dennis marches to the beat of a different drummer.
And he did. But he also produced.
Yeah, but in some context that should exclude you. But in the basketball context, Phil Jackson was able to take that and shape it. And the point is that I think diversity is beautiful. I think when we force uniformity, when we pursue uniformity instead of unity, I think we chase the wrong animal. But I love a church team. I think like ours, we have a wide variety of people on our staff and different educational backgrounds, different experiences. Some of them were raised in the church, some of them were not. Some of them had done formal seminary, others have not. But I think it makes for a healthy mix.
Yeah,
healthy mix.
Do you think? We see a lot of churches. I mean, you and I we've had experience in a few other churches, but we've had the most experience here at our church. But sometimes I look at other churches and I'm like, I feel like you're using business practices in a church, and churches have things in common with business in that they do business.
Sure, you have to.
And we live in a world where we have to, pay taxes and have accounting and do those things. So I'm not saying like, oh, you're wrong to have an accounting department, or you're wrong, any of those things. No. But I mean the way they deal with staff, the way they deal with hirings or firings, or what that looks like. Yeah. I don't know. I think in the future we're going to have to wrap our head around this.
I think it's a bigger concern that we've only seen the tip of the iceberg on. This is something that I think about a lot. I've read a fair amount on it, but the men of God and the men and women of God of 50 years ago even wouldn't recognize a lot of leadership styles today. They'd want to know where did they come from. Now, granted, culture's more complex, business world's more complex, and so on, but it doesn't change the fact of in the New Testament they appointed elders, and and it said God gave pastors, teachers, evangelists. There's no administrator in that, and there's a reason for that. I think again, churches have to take care of stuff, especially in our world, in our country. But what's happened, I think, inadvertently, is the pastor's been replaced by a CEO, an executive officer, a financial officer, something, information officer, and I think churches that get into trouble have stopped being pastor led. That's my opinion.
Yeah. I think it's something that Lee McLeod told us years ago. I think it was in a leadership thing that we brought him in to speak about, if I remember right. But he was describing a lack of skill. Because you could have both. You have someone who's like, well, you're incredibly skilled. You could be a CEO of a large company, but instead you're the pastor of this church. But you don't really have the soft skills of pastoring. Or caring for people, or whatever that is. And he was describing instead, the men or women who lead churches who have the soft skills. They're incredible shepherds. They love God deeply. They will show up on your doorstep in any moment of need. But when it comes time to, they've grown the church and we've got to add on, we've got to build. They're like, the devil's just fighting us. We just can't, we can't get this done no matter what we do. And he's like, it's not the devil. You got to go down to the planning committee and you got to get a permit.
And you have to learn how to read a balance sheet.
You got to read a balance sheet. You've got to do.
Or you should be filling out background checks.
Yes.
So it's true. There's all these little tripwires, you know. But what you and I talked about, and I think what we agree and we've seen is that those two sides of the coin of leadership, quality leadership, healthy, that produces good fruit is both. It's both integrity, the inner life, and it's also the outer life of skill. So the two sides of the coin are character and skill. And I think when you have both of those, you've got a healthy leader who's going to attract others, and he's going to be taken care of, and he's going to lead. He's not going to be just one of the boys, but he's going to actually lead people towards God's purposes. Now, if you look around in the church world, or even in the business world, there isn't a day you can't pick up a newspaper and read about moral failure.
Yeah.
I mean, you can fail in business in other ways, but moral failure is the most destructive.
Yeah. One of my favorite authors, Philip Yancey is going through right now as far as I could tell. Yeah. It seems like he's confessing and asking forgiveness and doing the things that you're supposed to do, but he had years of a hidden. So he had an incredible writing skill. I mean, I think he's one of the best writers there is.
A real gift.
It was quite a gift. But there was apparently this integrity piece that was lacking, at least for some portion of his life that he's dealing with now. And I'm so glad he's dealing with it. Yeah. I hope he remains a brother. It sounds like he is. It sounds like he wants to be a brother. Sure. He's not leaving the faith. He's confessing. But what does that do to all the people that read those books? What happens when a leader fails? I think that's why leadership is so key, and why it's a target as well. Yeah.
So many people lose when there's an inner failure in my character. So many people. The people that lose are the people. The first ones are usually the ones closest to me: his wife, his kids. But then the people that your relationship capital is diminished. I mean, people just say, "Well, I'm not reading anything anymore." By him, I'm not gonna. In fact, I'm getting rid of the stuff that I purchased. I mean, that's a sad deal. But you give up authority. You're diminished in some way, and in most cases, I don't. This isn't hard and fast rule, but it's my observation. In most cases, you never come back to where you used to be. You've sacrificed something that almost can't be. You can be forgiven. Sure, that's one thing by God and by men, but the consequences can't be erased. Yeah. So your name is tarnished, your reputation is ruined, and so forth.
If you're going to start a book club for young people that wanted to aspire to leadership, what's a couple books you'd put on their list? They read these.
There's a book that's current. It's relatively current by Paul David Tripp. We're going through it with our MAP program called Lead, and he just picks out 12 principles of effective leadership and godly leadership. I've loved stuff. I really enjoy Patrick Lencioni. I think he's solid. Emotionally Healthy Leadership is a book he wrote, and he connects. He correlates the idea of your background and knowing yourself with your strengths, your weaknesses, how your past has shaped you up to this point. Those kinds of things that I think are really important because they're operating whether we're conscious of them or not. That's a good one. Emotionally Healthy Leadership. I mean, John Maxwell's kind of the guru of leadership, both inside and outside the church, and he's led a pretty stable life. He's been above reproach for the most part. And so there's some. I mean, he's got dozens of books, I'm sure. Yeah, all good stuff.
Yeah, I like Eugene Peterson a lot. He writes specifically to pastors. So when you think about leadership, he's speaking to those who minister. A really simple one and a short one is called Letters to a Young Pastor. Right. And it's letters back and forth between him and his son, who had also started pastoring. Yeah. Even though it's such an informal way of it's such a great insight into what kind of leadership it takes to. Yeah. To
There's an old school book that we used to use all the time. I believe it was Oswald Smith, and it was just called Spiritual Leadership. Yeah. But when you read a book like that's 50 years old, and you put it up against a modern leadership book, you're like, these guys, were they on the same planet? Because I can think of a half a dozen men from the last century, and I don't mean like early 1900s, I mean the 50s, 60s, and 70s, that were tremendous men and led tremendous ministries. Jack Hayford, Church on the Way, Southern California, Chuck Swindoll, and others who led a life of integrity, and they all finished well.
Yeah.
They got to the end of their 30, 40, sometimes 50 years, and there was no major scandals, there was no immorality, they finished well. That's kind of a rare thing today, finishing well. And I think it's a sign of frankly compromise in the inner life, and even compromises that are made on a team, that we're going to cut corners and we're going to make excuses.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous thing.
Yeah, I think we talked about it a little bit the other night, but I would double down on it, that the first person you're going to lead is lead yourself.
Yeah.
And if you can't lead yourself, if you can't tell yourself no, tell yourself yes, I'm going to get up and do this. No, I'm not going to do that. I mean, you have to lead yourself. And if you can lead yourself well, then you can maybe start to lead somebody else by laying your life down for them. And that's the complete difference that we were describing, like, skills might be the same in similar ways, but the difference between, I think, godly and ungodly leadership is godly leadership is like Christ, in that he came to serve. He came to lay his life down.
Yeah, a different style.
Yeah, and his reputation was up to his Father and not up to him. Not that he didn't care about his reputation, but he did what the Father told him to do, whether that was popular or not. And clearly, many times, it was unpopular.
Yeah. What does that mean for you? Like, you're the lead pastor, and you need to lead yourself first. What does that look like so to speak, in your daily life? What does that mean?
It means there has to be, as in ministry, there's always going to be opportunities to be in the Word for somebody else's sake. But I got to have opportunities to be in the Word for my sake. Yeah. I've got to feed myself before I feed anybody else. I know it's cheesy to put your own mask on first analogy, but there's something to that. Sure. Like, if I'm starving, I can't feed anybody, anybody else. I've got to take care of that as well. I've got to lead in my home well. If I'll show up to your home, but I won't show up to mine. Yeah. If I'll show up to your event, but I won't show up for my daughters or my wife or my friends because I'm too busy, I'm doing the Lord's work, then I think I'm not actually going to be able to lead other people well.
Is it all just spiritual, or is there other pieces to it?
No, I mean,
because I think it's a really valid and really important subject.
Yeah, I confessed that a little bit today, just in staff meeting. I said, I've been feeling anxious lately, so I've been trying to pay attention to that. Go for longer walks, spend a little bit of time without a screen or anything else that can bring anxiety. So you've got to take care of your own health.
I think you and I have observed, like, we'll be in a meeting. For example, our world as pastors, we'll be in a meeting with a bunch of pastors, and you look across the room, and half of them look like, man, you don't look well physically. Yeah. You look unhealthy. Yeah. So that has to play into your other parts of your life.
There's almost an unfortunate thing that is, I think the church is coming out of it, but I think there was a generation that thought, I don't think of myself, and that's more godly. If I don't, I'll just grab a fast food burger. I'll forego, my quiet time because I need to take care of this. I'll forego, working out or getting out on a day off and enjoying nature because I'm doing something, for the kingdom. And they think that's more godly, but it's not. And it actually doesn't make you do more. It makes you do less for the kingdom. Yeah. Like you'll accomplish less if you don't take care of yourself than if you do take care of yourself. So it's not selfish to care about your health.
Not at all.
Or to care about your family's health, or to care about your mental and emotional health, those things. I mean, we try to guard, you and I, and you taught me this, just guard a Sabbath, take time on a Sabbath to do something that feeds you, something that
restores you.
Yeah, restores you.
Yeah,
and nature is always a big part of that. For me, there are times when you don't want to get out in nature. It looks terrible, out there. Like, it's not the day to get out there, and I can, get alone with a book and enjoy myself as well, or do something else that is that feeds. Yeah.
Isn't it interesting that we in the times we're living in, that we have a variety of health crises, right? I mean, everybody and their brother is selling something that addresses either the mental health crisis or the physical health crisis, the cholesterol crisis, whatever and most of those are real. I mean, I think people, it's ironic that we live in the most technologically advanced times in the history of mankind. And we have so many maladies. We have so many neuroses. We have so many anxieties. And a lot of that's the West,
Yeah.
I think.
It's funny how each of those things too, like whatever, the dishwasher, the washing machine, the things that took work away, were supposed to take work away. They didn't really do it. Yeah. And now they're saying, I just read a whole article the other day about AI, that like it's supposed to transform and make everything easier, but nobody's working less. Nobody
No. It just compresses everything.
Yeah. And I'm not anti-AI necessarily. I think it has its uses and has its things that it's terrible at as well. But I just think that's interesting. Like, we're still trying to do that thing that gives us margin, but you just have to make margin.
Exactly, because margin's never going to help you make room for itself.
That's what I mean by leading yourself by saying yes and no to yourself. Years ago, I realized that, like, I'm not good at telling myself no. Like, I want something. And it's funny. I know it sounds like you're bipolar or something because you're talking about two selves in there, but there's a self that wants something, and there's a self that wants something better.
Yeah.
There's the flesh is what we would call it. There's a flesh that wants something right now and immediate, and there's a spirit, another me, that is regenerated, that has a deeper hunger for something better than that. And that me, that better me that is being made into Christ's image, has to be able to tell the old me no.
Yeah. One of our pastoral colleagues, John Mark Comer, pastored in Portland for many years, and now he's out teaching and so forth, but writer. And one of his books was The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. I read the book when it came out a few years ago, and I think I did a Bible study with it. But I haven't talked to anybody that read the book that said, I don't know what this guy's talking about.
Yeah.
This is a wild thought. Everybody who's ever read it said, oh my gosh, he's describing my life. He's describing my family. He's describing my.
It's easy to agree with. It's hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah. But the premise of the book obviously is you've got to force yourself to slow down, because if you don't slow down, you're going to self-destruct. We're not wired to operate at the pace, and that the culture operates at. And you can fake it. You can even make it for a season. Yeah. But I don't think it's going to end well.
Was it him or someone else who said, "Hurry isn't of the devil. Hurry is the devil"?
Yeah, that was John Ortberg. And that's when he was interviewing again. Well, it's interesting because the genesis of John Mark Comer's book came out of a conversation between John Ortberg and Dallas Willard. Oh. And that's when they were having this conversation. And I don't know if it was Ortberg or Willard that says, hurry isn't the devil, hurry is the devil. And I agree, because it's the thief of our soul. You and I know, and we believe the reason this conversations go in this direction is we're made up of different parts. We're emotional beings, we're spiritual beings, and we're physical beings. Yeah. And we know when one of those is out of whack, then it affects the other areas. It's inevitable. It's inescapable. And so I have to take care of all three of those parts.
Yeah, I got 2 books delivered today to my house. One was Piper. I think it's called Brothers, We Are Not Professionals.
Yeah. I thought I was going to mention that in the teaching the other night.
I haven't actually read it yet. This will be my first time.
Book.
And he's speaking directly to pastors. Yeah. I'm looking forward to that. And the other one is, I think it's called A Dangerous Profession or A Dangerous Calling. I think it's A Dangerous Profession.
Dangerous Calling, maybe, yeah.
Yeah. And it's also talking about pastors and leading yourself. So I'm looking forward to both of them.
Yeah.
I'm not done learning this lesson.
I bet 15 years ago, but it was almost a prophetic warning to where leadership styles were going in the church. And I just think it's not a depressing subject. It's actually a challenging and for me, it's an invigorating subject, because leadership doesn't have to end in disaster. It doesn't have to burn people out. It doesn't have to abuse people. Yeah. Leadership is there to make people better. Leadership is there to enhance people's lives. Leadership's there to protect people. So good leadership, healthy leadership in any area, those that we mentioned at the beginning, my church, my family, my business, the government, any place God has put me, healthy leadership, everybody wins.
Yeah.
No one comes back later and says, "Oh, that was terrible. My leader was so healthy.
Yeah.
I hated working for him."
Yeah.
Who does that? No one does that.
Yeah. Yeah, of the 12 that Jesus called, and he spent time in prayer before he called them, one of them failed.
Yeah.
You know, all of them scattered at some point.
Yeah.
But in the early church, those 11 that came back and survived and were filled with the Holy Spirit, all of them ended well. Yeah,
They did.
Not
comfortably,
easy. Yeah,
but they ended well.
Yeah, but they ended
were
well.
running the race. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that should be more the norm. I think we should not tolerate what we're doing now. Where sometimes I'm afraid it's the Saul versus David paradigm of, well, here's a tall, handsome man. Honestly, charismatic. He's clear. He looks like a leader. He must be a leader. And I think we're doing that too often. And those people are maybe hollow shells that don't have what's inside that needs to be inside.
And the truth is, there's just a plethora of terrible leadership examples out there. I mean, in other words, there's people who actually actively sort of encourage, like, hey, when you get to be a leader now, you can fleece the flock, or you can take advantage, you can pad your nest, you can raise your salary. Basically, you're in this position to benefit you. Man, you look at dictators around the world, whether that's Africa or South America, wherever that is, wherever that's taking place, and you find that they are entrenched. They get into leadership. They surround themselves with family members or people who are going to, and the way they keep them, the way they insulate themselves is they pay everybody. Everybody gets a cut of the poor people's. So they're literally fleecing an entire nation.
Yeah.
And once they're entrenched, it's very difficult to get them out.
I didn't think I would see that. I mean, I knew you'd find those occasions in the U.S., but I'm afraid
we're not immune.
I'm afraid we're post-Christian culture, and now we see politicians, unfortunately, that are fleecing and stealing. And,
well, it's so
and of course,
absurd.
it's not all politicians, and there are godly ones there, and I appreciate that. But it's heartbreaking to see.
You want an interesting study? Just go and check out like a first-term congresswoman, congressman, and what their base salary is when they start, or what their net worth is, and then you look at their net worth, 8 years or 12 years later, and it's gone up exponentially. And you have to ask the question: so
where's that
money coming from? Of course, everybody winks at that and says, well, that's just the system. That's the way it is. But it's, again, that I'm in this position to milk it for all it's worth. And in the meantime, I'll try to do some good. I'll try not to be an outright crook. But and that's a sad thing, because it gives politics a bad name, because politics is there to really serve. At least in a democracy, it's supposed to serve the people and make everybody's lives better instead of more miserable.
A better word for it that we have used in the past is public servants.
Yeah.
I'm a public servant.
We actually, that's a joke, right? That's a joke. That's a late night comedy.
Yeah.
Public
It shouldn't
servant.
be. It's not supposed to be.
I know, right?
But it is. It's a punchline.
Yeah. And to be fair, even in the church, like, oh, you're a pastor, huh? Work once a week.
Yeah.
And where are you getting all that?
Yeah, and that shows up. And I'm not saying this to brag, like we stack chairs or throw out trash, but when people come up to me and like, why are you throwing away trash? Because I serve here.
Yeah.
This is my church. I serve here. The same with you. Like if I break down boxes or stack chairs or whatever, like that's because I'm not just paid to do something else. I'm also, this is my life. That I want to give my life somewhere. And I think sometimes people, I don't know how to frame this exactly right. But I've ran upon this in church culture in the past, when people just think of it as, this is my job. And this is the job that I have. And you won't, and I don't just mean at Church in the Hill, actually I mean more outside of Church in the Hill, but people like you want me to just give you my life for the job. And that's a tough conversation, because you can be abusive as a leader and just say, give more, give more, give more. I don't care how much you're being paid, give more, give more. But the scripture says, pick up your cross and follow him. And you're going to pick a place to do that ultimately. That's not just an ethereal out there spirit that I have. But no, that's why we pick someone to love for the rest of our life. Trisha's the person I'm going to lay my life down for the most until the day that I die. She's who I've picked to lay my life down for. But the church is the next place that I do that outside of my family. Like, okay, this is the place where I'm going to give my life. We take margin, we take Sabbaths, but we give.
We give.
Yeah.
You know, we asked a question the other night in our leadership cohort before we got started. Go around the table and talk about somebody in your life who was a leader, whenever that was, whatever the time frame, and what did they do and who were they to you? What did they do that had impact, and who were they to you? And it was fascinating. We could have listened to the stories all night long of how many beautiful examples there was of a selfless leader. No one around the table said, well, I had this dictator father who really shaped my... Well, some people, their lives were shaped by negative influence, but most of us have great stories of how a leader impacted our lives, helped shape our lives. Maybe it was a small or a big thing, but and usually they were servant loving, lay their lives down for their followers, which is what Jesus is. He's the ultimate shepherd. He's the ultimate example. I think every leadership model, every leadership instance should be held up against that pattern. And what would Jesus do? It sounds, I know it's a wristband, but it's true. How would Jesus respond? What would he choose in this moment? How would he speak?
I think it's so awesome too that we can start to wrap up here, but that I was thinking about my childhood, like school K through 12. A lot of those people, teachers, I don't really even remember that well. And no, not that they were bad. There was a couple that were bad.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this
is
a bad
tough
teacher.
coaches, tough teachers.
But I think more often than not, they were just busy. Like I was just one of the many people they had to care for. And so they didn't necessarily give me a lot of time and attention. It was transactional. But it only took one or two to stand out, or one coach or one teacher to really change the course of your life.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of pastors over the years as I've just grown and moved from place to place. And for some, they didn't even know my name because it was a relatively large church and I was there for just a couple years. It was a transitional time in my life.
Yeah.
And they were good pastors, but they didn't really change my life because they didn't know me. But others that they just took some time and they got to know me. And it just takes one or two leaders to really change the course of someone's life.
It really does. It could be just a redemptive moment. I was the same way. I got a lot of attention in high school, but unfortunately it was because of my bad behavior. So I got negative attention. But there were a couple of people that somehow took advantage of a moment in time or an opportunity to speak life to me and speak perspective to just a foolish young man and a clueless young man. Yeah. And they were 10 years ahead of me, but they spoke life. They spoke redemptively.
Yeah. I don't mind taking a moment here to plug something because it's in this line, and I think it would be very beneficial, and that would be the Pacific Northwest Men's Conference.
Yeah.
Men, if you're feeling like I hear what you're talking about, but I haven't had it in my life yet. I'm lacking in spiritual leadership, that I haven't been led, but I want to. Like you're a husband or a father, or you're a single man and aspire to be one someday, or you're a business leader. I don't think you could do better than to get in a group of men like that and gather around the Word of God and see what He says about. I could speak. I can vouch for it from last year. Last year was fantastic. I thought they did a really great job. And so I think they're basically having the same kind of speakers
just
this year.
World-class presenters, just amazing, And their focus, they have a focus this year on younger men. Mm-hmm. In fact, if you're under 30, I believe, from 13 to 30, you get like a 50% discount on the registration. It's there on their website. Pacific Northwest Men's Conference 2026. Yeah. Put that in there when you go to look for it. Yeah. Make sure you're on this year, and it's February 28th, right in downtown Salem Convention Center. Yeah. It's one day, Saturday, from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock. Lunch is included. Yeah. And there's going to be a bunch of guys there, and you're right. That's a great little. Yeah. I mean, a one day thing to find something to put in your tool bag. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And there's other opportunities as well. Lots of places who do it. We do several things. That kind of put a tool in your tool bag as a leader that we encourage you to check out on our website, even if it's just joining a life group. And because like I say, first person you're going to lead is yourself. So can you lead yourself in saying, I'm going to discipline myself to be in community or not? Yeah. No. It's a great subject. That's probably one of my favorite subjects in all the world because when it works, it's beautiful.
Yep.
And when it doesn't work, it's
disastrous.
It's sad, but it doesn't negate the idea.
Yeah.
The idea is not a bad idea. It's the execution. So.
Yep. All right, thanks, friends. We'll see you soon. See you on Sunday. This last week we talked about the first part of Lazarus when God doesn't show up because Jesus purposefully delays for their sake, and Lazarus dies. But this week we're going to see Lazarus resurrected and see what that means, what that's all about, that Jesus is the resurrection and the life. Yeah. So, come join us.
Great story.
Yep. See you soon.
God bless.